Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking you on a journey right into an actual intelligence report. This one's dated just yesterday, August 12th, 2025.
Mm.
And our mission really is to peel back the layers on the most pressing global events and, uncover what they truly mean for you.
Yeah, think of it like getting a direct feed from the world's pulse.
Exactly. A shortcut to being remarkably well informed about, well, all the complex interplay of global stuff, geopolitics, climate, humanitarian crises, even market reactions.
And this isn't just, any report you'd grab from the headlines. It's a comprehensive daily intelligence report. This one's from Next Site.
Right.
And what's really valuable right from the get-go are these classification flags.
Yeah.
They give you a transparent look at the report's reliability and context, basically.
Okay, so what did yesterday's look like?
For yesterday, August 12th, we saw a moderate threat level overall. Then there's an Admiralty code of A2.
A2, meaning?
That means the info is coming from highly reliable source reporting, often directly from the organizations involved. So, good sourcing. Gotcha.
Plus a confidence score of 3. That tells us the material is credible, it's been cross-checked, but also things are still developing. Events are actively evolving.
That transparency is key, isn't it? Understanding the weight of the info.
Absolutely crucial before you even dive into the details.
So let's unpack this then. The executive summary, that kind of gives us the bottom line up front, right? The immediate snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
What was the main message from August 12th?
Well, the BLUF was pretty stark. August 12th showed a significant escalation in humanitarian crises, also climate-driven disasters kicking up, and alongside that, the usual geopolitical maneuvering.
But markets.
Yeah, that's the intriguing part. Global markets showed this sort of selective resilience. They weren't completely tanking despite all the turbulence.
Interesting.
And the report then zooms in on what it calls spotlight themes, those critical issues needing immediate attention.
And the first one that jumps right out is that really dire Gaza famine warning. It sounds incredibly urgent. Oh, it absolutely is. You had a joint statement from 24 foreign ministers issuing a stark warning. Famine in Gaza is imminent.
Imminent, wow.
And this isn't just like a vague concern. The report gives hard metrics. UN reports estimate only about 25% of the required aid is actually getting into Gaza.
Only a quarter.
Only a quarter. And over 60% of children there are malnourished. 60%.
Oh, that's just hard to hear.
It really underscores the urgency, you know. Their call for Israel to allow unrestricted aid, open up all the crossings. It's a critical situation, and it seems to be deteriorating fast.
It's just heartbreaking. And then shifting focus completely, we're seeing climate change really hitting hard across Europe, right? With some real economic ripple effects, too.
Precisely. Record temperatures soaring past 40 degrees Celsius, that's over 104 Fahrenheit, across southern Europe. Spain, Portugal, Turkey, really feeling it.
And that means wildfires.
Widespread wildfires, yeah. Thousands forced to evacuate. But what's fascinating from an analysis perspective is the immediate economic response. Energy markets reacted sharply. Spot electricity prices jumped 12% just week on week.
12%. That hits people directly.
Directly in the wallet. And it obviously intensified calls for accelerating climate adaptation measures across the continent. It kind of forces us to rethink what critical infrastructure resilience even means now.
How so?
Well, it's not just about the big things like hurricanes or floods anymore. It can be sustained heat straining the energy grids, or even, as we'll see later, these sort of unpredictable ecological shifts.
Right, okay. And speaking of economics and global dynamics, a big headline yesterday was President Trump extending the U.S.-China trade truce again.
Yes, another 90-day extension on the existing tariff truce. So the tariffs, they remain at 30% on Chinese goods coming in and 10% on U.S. products going there.
And how did the markets take it? Any big reaction?
That's what's really telling here, the lack of a big reaction.
Yeah.
Equity markets barely budged. S&P 500 down just, 0.25%. Nikkei up maybe 2.15%. Pretty flat.
So investors just yawned.
Kind of suggests they aren't just seeing this as another delay. It feels like they're pricing in a new normal almost, this persistent sort of managed friction between the U.S. and China.
A fundamental shift in perception, then.
It seems like it. These truces feel less like steps toward resolution and more like just the temporary state of things. Some traders were even joking about it, calling it the taco trade.
Taco.
Yeah, Trump always chickens out. It sort of reflects that baked-in expectation that a full-blown escalation gets avoided, but the tension remains. It says a lot about how the market views this whole relationship now.
Before we zoom in further on the regions, just a quick note for you listening. This deep dive comes from Next Site. They're a dedicated global intelligence company.
Hmm.
And they're actually the ones behind the open source OSINT platform, SiteConnect, which powers these insights. You can customize it to your own interests, too, over at next-site.com.
And as we mentioned, they attach those reliability and confidence flags to every report, so you get that transparency on the sourcing and corroboration behind each story we discuss.
Okay, so we've got the global snapshot, the big spotlight themes. But, to really get a feel for these trends, we need to zoom in, right? See how they're playing out region by region. That's where the often surprising details pop up.
Absolutely, the specifics on the ground.
Let's start in North America. There was that really troubling incident at the CDC in Atlanta.
Yeah, this one was flagged with a high threat level in the report, specifically pointing to domestic extremist violence, which the report notes is a growing area of concern.
What happened exactly?
So on August 9th, apparently a disgruntled gunman shot and killed a police officer, Officer David Rose, near the CDC headquarters, and then took his own life. The scene was significant. Over 500 shell casings recovered.
500. Good grief.
Yeah. And the shooter had apparently expressed anger over vaccine mandates online and seemed to have specifically targeted the officer.
So this isn't just a random act.
The analysis suggests not. It really highlights these evolving internal security threats, especially around federal facilities,
Yeah.
and that dangerous mix of extremist views and, real-world violence.
A stark reminder of those tensions. Okay, let's pivot over to Europe. And this jellyfish story, clogging a nuclear plant. It sounds almost made up.
It really does, doesn't it? But it's a very real and, frankly, startling example of these unexpected climate-related risks.
So what happened? Jellyfish just swarmed the plant.
Pretty much. On August 12th, a massive swarm of jellyfish clogged the cooling water intake systems at the Civaux nuclear power plant in western France.
Yeah.
They had to shut down 4 reactors.
4 reactors because of jellyfish.
Yeah. See, jellyfish are drawn to the warmer water discharged by power plants, and they just congregate near the intake filters, eventually blocking the pumps needed for cooling.
Wow, so it's more than just a weird news item.
Exactly. It forces that rethink we mentioned about critical infrastructure resilience. It's not just storms. It could be ecological shifts like this. And the report notes this isn't totally unprecedented. A similar thing happened in Scotland back in 2021.
So it could be a growing vulnerability.
Potentially, yeah. Especially as water temperatures change. A new kind of climate vulnerability we need to factor in.
Incredible. Okay, shifting south to the Middle East, the report mentioned a really sensitive proposal regarding Palestinians.
Indeed. Highly sensitive. Israel is reportedly in discussions with South Sudan about potentially relocating Palestinians from Gaza.
Relocating them to South Sudan.
That's the report. It's presented by Israel as part of a policy of voluntary migration, with the stated aim of reducing Gaza's population.
But that sounds incredibly controversial.
Extremely. And the report is careful to note this. It's been widely condemned by human rights groups. They're warning about the risk of forced displacement, effectively transferring civilians from one crisis zone to another.
So completely different views on this.
Vastly different. You have the official framing from Israel, and then strong condemnation from rights groups concerned about humanitarian law and implications. The report lays out both perspectives impartially. It's a complex and volatile issue.
Absolutely. Okay, let's look at Africa now. We're seeing both ongoing challenges like migration, but also something quite historic being declared.
That's right. 2 very different stories, but both significant. First, the migration pressure is still intense. The report highlighted an event on August 9th, actually. About 100 migrants, including 7 children, managed to swim from Morocco into Ceuta, the Spanish enclave.
And that puts pressure on resources.
Completely overwhelmed its reception system. The report notes the facility there is designed for maybe 27 minors. It's currently holding 528.
Wow, that number speaks volumes.
It really paints a vivid picture of the continuous humanitarian strain on those border areas. But then, on a very different note, you have the African Union.
The reparations declaration.
Exactly. A truly historic move. They formally declared 2025 the year of reparations and African heritage. And they're launching a whole decade of action, from 2026 to 2036.
What does that actually entail?
Well, it's a formal resolution. It calls for global campaigns, potentially legal action too, seeking compensation from former colonial powers, not just for slavery and colonialism, but also for related issues like climate injustice.
That could have huge long-term implications.
Potentially, yes. especially in discussions around debt relief, climate finance, and it can certainly encourage new wave of legal challenges against states and maybe even corporations.
Fascinating. And finally, let's touch on the Oceania Pacific region. Tensions seem to be simmering there, particularly in the South China Sea.
They certainly are. And there was a specific incident yesterday, August 11th, reported on the 12th. A Chinese Navy ship actually collided with its own Coast Guard vessel.
Collided with its own ship. How?
Apparently, while trying to block a Philippine patrol boat near Scarborough Shoal, which is a contested area, they essentially bumped into each other in the process.
Any injury?
Luckily, no serious injuries reported. But it absolutely escalated tensions there. It makes things feel even more volatile.
And does the report add any context to this?
It does. It notes that this incident didn't happen in isolation. It mentions a recent analysis, I think, from CSIS, highlighting potentially declining U.S. influence in the Pacific region.
So it's part of a bigger picture.
Exactly. This collision, even if accidental between their own ships, vividly illustrates China's increasing military assertiveness, the sort of crowding tactics they use, and just how fraught these territorial disputes are, raises real questions about regional stability.
It's clear that these official reports, these incidents, paint one picture. But what about the people experiencing this? The report has that section on people's hearsay from social media. What's the buzz online?
Yeah, that section is always fascinating. It gives you that immediate, unfiltered public sentiment, which can be quite different from official statements.
So what stood out from yesterday's chatter? Let's start with North America.
Okay, so in North America, obviously hashtag Atlanta shooting was trending. Lots of grief for Officer Rose. But you also saw really polarized posts. Some calling the shooter a martyr against vaccine mandates. Just shows those deep divisions.
Oh, that's intense.
Definitely. And then on the economic side, those taco trade jokes about Trump's tariff truce were making the rounds. Traders commenting, markets know he always blinks.
Yeah.
It reflects this kind of collective fatigue with the whole trade saga.
Any other reactions?
Yeah, related to that plant explosion near Pittsburgh, U.S. Steel's Clairton Coke Works. Union members were online expressing real anger, talking about repeated accidents, demanding hashtag safe steel reforms. It shows how these big industrial events hit very close to home.
Right. So many strong feelings. How about over in Europe?
Well, European users were sharing just harrowing images of the wildfires, lots of comments lamenting this as the new normal, and really pushing governments for urgent climate action. Real frustration there.
And the jellyfish incident. Did that get much attention?
Oh, yeah. Lively debates about nuclear power sparked by that. Some criticizing the reliance on it, saying it shows vulnerability. But then you had energy analysts pushing back, pointing out the renewables also face climate risks, like droughts affecting hydro.
Interesting debates. What about the EU's statement on Ukraine?
That drew praise for showing unity, but also sharp criticism, particularly from Hungarian users, some accusing Brussels of, warmongering, shows it's still a point of division.
Okay. And the Middle East, especially with the Gaza crisis, what are people saying there?
You saw Gazans posting just desperate videos, malnourished children, empty markets, direct appeals to the world, open the crossings now. Really raw, emotional stuff underscoring the severity.
And on the Israeli side, regarding those resettlement plans?
Also very polarized. You had far-right activists voicing strong support online, seeing it as a demographic solution for Gaza. But many others expressed deep anxiety, fearing forced transfers would just deepen Israel's global isolation, an incredibly charged online environment.
Sounds like it. And Africa, particularly that reparations announcement.
That got a huge positive reaction from African youth especially. Hashtag #ReparationsNo was trending, often shared with powerful graphics about colonial history and exploitation, a real sense of mobilization.
And the migrant situation in Ceuta.
That sparked debate between Moroccan and Spanish users, some demanding more EU support for Spain, while human rights advocates focused on the conditions, highlighting the, quote, warehousing of minors. These snapshots really show the diverse perceptions, the speed of info, and the immediate gut reactions to these crises. It gives you that human dimension. Now, if we try to connect all these different threads, the report does offer a crucial correlational analysis. It tries to show how these events, which seem separate, actually tie together, especially for markets and decision makers.
Okay, so what are the big connections?
Well, what's really striking, as we touched on, is that despite all the geopolitical noise, the humanitarian crises, global markets didn't massively react on August 12th.
That resilience again.
Exactly. It points to this deeper trend, maybe, of investor adaptation. They seem to be getting used to a certain level of persistent risk. The U.S.-China truce extension, for example, largely priced in. That's why the S&P only slipped a tiny bit.
So investors are becoming numb to it,
Mhm.
or just better prepared.
Probably more the latter. It suggests a maturation of risk perception. They're not necessarily blindsided anymore. They're trying to integrate these systemic risks into longer-term strategies.
But there were some specific market impacts.
Oh, absolutely. There were direct hits. Those European heat waves we discussed, they definitely pushed spot electricity prices up 12% week on week. That directly helped utility stocks, sure, but it also stoked broader inflation fears.
Right.
And the Chilean copper mine collapse, even though the main event was a bit earlier, the reporting and impact analysis hit now. Copper futures jumped 4% on speculation about tighter global supply.
So specific commodity impacts. What about the other big stories? Reparations, Gaza.
Interestingly, the African Union's reparations campaign had very little immediate financial impact. But it's flagged as something with potential long-term influence on investment, especially as companies focus more on reputational risk in ESG ratings.
So a slow burn effect, maybe?
Could be. And even the terrible situations in Gaza and Ceuta, while they triggered huge surges in charitable crowdfunding online, they had no discernible effect on things like sovereign debt yields. It highlights where financial markets tend to focus their immediate attention, rightly or wrongly.
This brings up a really important question, especially for you listening. What's the practical takeaway? How is this intelligence actually used? The report includes recommended actions for organizations.
Exactly. And looking at those gives great insight into the real-world application.
So what kind of actions are recommended based on yesterday's intel?
Well, for instance, on climate resilience, the advice is clear. Accelerate investments in making supply chains and facilities tougher, especially in regions prone to extreme weather. Think Europe's heat, Japan's recent floods mentioned elsewhere. Build in better planning for energy price spikes.
Makes sense. Proactive steps.
Definitely. For geopolitical hype spots, it means things like factoring humanitarian escalations like we see in Gaza or increasing migration flows like in Ceuta into your risk models. And having solid contingency plans if critical materials like copper from Chile get disrupted.
Okay, so planning for disruption. What about the less tangible stuff, like advocacy or security?
The report emphasizes engaging in what it calls responsible advocacy and partnerships. So supporting transparency initiatives, it mentions Liberian fisheries reforms as an example elsewhere, aligning with human rights campaigns.
And that helps how?
It's not just about doing good, it can significantly boost ESG ratings, which investors care about, and mitigate reputational risk down the line.
Right, the ESG angle.
And crucially, after incidents like the CDC shooting, there's a strong recommendation to reassess and strengthen both cybersecurity and physical security at health and research facilities, and to really foster active collaboration with law enforcement on monitoring extremist threats.
So it connects the dots from news event to concrete business or organizational action.
Precisely. Understanding these recommendations helps us all see how intelligence moves from just raw data, raw events, towards actionable foresight, seeing the real-world implications.
Well, that brings us toward the end of today's deep dive. We've really journeyed through the complex layers of just one day's intelligence report, haven't we? From those subtle market signals to the urgent human crises and those surprising climate impacts.
There's a lot to take in from just 24 hours around the globe.
It really is.
And maybe, considering all these moving pieces we've explored today, from the jellyfish taking out reactors to geopolitical shifts to how it all plays out on social media, here's something to think about. What aspect of this whole global tapestry do you think might have the most unexpected ripple effect in the coming months? And why?
That is a genuinely thought-provoking question to leave things on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We really hope you gained some valuable insights.
Yeah, I hope it was useful.
And we just encourage you to keep exploring the world around you with an informed and always curious mind.